Hello and welcome to this morning's episode of Trending, brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com, use the code TRENDING and you get 10% off. Joined again today by Richard Willett. Now, before we start, we just want to mention Jamie White, the InfoWars reporter that's been murdered outside of his home in Texas. Just want to pay our respects to his family, to his friends, and of course to the team over at InfoWars. There's lots of, theories and stuff going around online. Obviously, we don't know what's happened, who's responsible for it. The police, as I understand, are saying it was a car burglary, but of course, it can change in a heartbeat what happened and who's responsible. So we just want to mention it and like I say, pass on our respects and that we hope whoever's responsible is swiftly brought to justice. Richard.
Yeah, of course.
So starting today's show then, mate, your first story, Elon Musk, he's blaming Ukraine.
And we're seeing this a lot lately in other stories as well. The blaming of Ukraine. Now, people who've watched this show, watched the channel, Iconic, know that we're neither, pro-Ukraine, pro-Russia. We think that they all kind of collude at the top for this agenda. But there's a lot of blame Ukraine now. This made me kind of laugh. And if you watch the clip here, we'll have a little clip here. You can see that Elon Musk's not quite sure about his own little possible fib here. They asked what happened to X, and obviously we were all on there a couple of days ago trying to do bits of work here and there, and it all went a bit haywire. Not lots of people could log in, and all of these things. You can't embed videos from it at the moment, and many other things depending on where you're living. So there was obviously some sort of hack. Now, with conspiracy theorists would say that did they do it to themselves and all sorts like that. But he says that it's been found that they found a IP address that was linked to Ukraine. Now, let's watch this. He doesn't seem convinced by his own words here.
There was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
So an IP address, Richard, it seems quite vague to me.
It is vague, isn't it? I mean, I know young people who can do these sort of things. I can't do these sort of things. I can barely use paint sometimes on the computer, but we're old and that's expected. But young kids can hide IP addresses. So to say that they found it from the military in Ukraine, I don't feel like that's possibly the truth. What a convenient kind of lie, really, to say that it come from Ukraine and they can't hide their IP address, the hack into X. I'm not buying it, and I don't know from the look of his face on the video whether he's buying it or not. I mean, people can hide their IP addresses quite quickly, and I can't see how someone hacking into X isn't able to actually hide their IP address. It doesn't seem true to me, mate.
I do wonder actually, because I've seen a few stories where. And we're going to come to one later on, actually, where stuff about Ukraine is starting to filter out now in a way that it wasn't before. It makes me wonder, has Zelensky sort of served his purpose as the useful idiot now? Do you get that fear? I'm starting to wonder whether actually they've almost overcooked the eggs with Zelensky a little bit. His popularity is dropping, and has consistently, to be fair, been dropping over the last probably 18 months. And just the amount of Ukraine flags in bios and Ukraine flags flowing outside of people's houses completely disappearing is sort of testament to that. So I wonder if they're done with him now, because I don't think they're done with Ukraine at all, but they might well be done with Zelensky.
I think you might be right there. Yeah, they've used him up, and he probably realised very early on that he was being used for this purpose. Possibly even got into it in the first place to be used for this purpose. The people that are funding him, the oligarchs that are funding him, are very much attached to the likes of the Messianic lot that I bang on about all the time. They're funding people. I think we covered this last week, that they're funding a few people that fund foundations, so you can track back to these guys in Brooklyn. So, there's much more going on here. These are just your front and center actors, literally, in his case. And I think they might be done with him. But it's a very much a shift in the mainstream narrative of Ukraine was, let's save Ukraine, and they're the defenders of the world. And now it's kind of, they're nicking all our money, is kind of seeping through. So there's obviously a switch and a turn here in the mainstream narrative as well. So it's an interesting one to watch as well. And there's there are opinions both sides that are valid to either side of the issue as well. So you can understand why people in the UK are annoyed at the Ukraine taking all the money and taxpayers' money is going there, but they're not so bothered about Israel. Um, but you can understand from the other point of view, there's a larger game being played here, mate. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, exactly. And the thing that people need to remember as well, and you only need to look at 9/11 for this, is that, and Osama bin Laden, who was a hero of the West, he was funded and trained by the CIA to fight against the Soviets in Afghanistan, and he was a freedom fighter. Suddenly, then, he was the FBI's most wanted in the click of a finger. And you can see that playing out in Syria as well, where Al-Qaeda's bad. Oh, no, wait a minute, we're funding Al-Qaeda. Oh, no, Al-Qaeda are good. Oh, hang on, Al-Qaeda are massacring people again. Oh, maybe they're bad again then. So just because Zelensky's the god-like character last week doesn't mean he will be next week. Moving on, this is a similar story to yesterday. We spoke about, Labour making it more and more difficult for farmers. They're not even trying anymore. They don't care. They're running for the finish line. So this is another story from today. Subsidies paused without warning in Labour's latest, because it's one of many, shattering blow to UK farmers. This is an article in the Express. Farming subsidies have been halted without warning. I mean, the arrogance of it. In the Labour government's latest shattering blow to farmers and rural communities. Post-Brexit payments to farmers were paused on Tuesday, yesterday, when the government announced plans to revise the sustainable farming incentive after June's spending review. News of the pause comes amid protests. So, farmers already cheesed off at Labour for various other things they've been doing. National Farmers Union President Tom Bradshaw said this is another shattering blow to English farms, delivered yet again with no warning, no understanding of the industry, and complete lack of compassion or care. The last two I'll agree with. There's a lack of compassion, there's a lack of care. In terms of the lack of understanding, oh no, they know exactly what they're doing. This is completely intentional. Now, obviously, Labour will sell it as the fact that, we're saving money. Tories blew loads of money and all that kind of nonsense. They still, use that same excuse. The black hole. So, okay, you'll still be subsidising wind farms, will you? Yep. You'll still be subsidising solar farms and other net zero nonsense. Yeah, of course you will. You still be sending money to Ukraine. Oh yeah, billions of it. Don't you worry about that, sunshine. You'll still be sending 60 million quid to these people that are supposed. Oh no, hang on a minute. They were Al Qaeda, then they were freedom fighters, and they got rid of Assad, and now they're massacring thousands of people again. So are they bad yet? I don't know if they're bad yet, Rich. I've not heard from David Lammy. He's not confirmed whether they're bad again yet. But £60 million of English taxpayers' money, British taxpayers' money, was given to them, no problem. But subsidies to help farmers put food on the plates of the great British public. Sorry, mate. Can't afford that.
Yeah, and it's also like, let's blame the previous government in charge that they give them money. Like there's any difference between the two. I see Trump doing exactly the same thing with the Democrats. They was funding them, but they're all the same. We all know you're all the same. Let's just cut this nonsense out. So again, this switch and bait. It doesn't matter. It's whatever they're useful for in that stage of the process of the agenda. They'll be good, bad, black or white, shades of grey. It's all the same to them. They don't care. They're playing both sides of the chessboard. We know this. Everybody who watches this show knows this. And this is the important thing, not to get dragged into the game and start picking sides, because they are all on the same side, the same team. Unfortunately, many of them may not even know that and believe they're doing the right thing. A lot of them will. That's how a cult works. But, as you say, they're taking money from the farmers. And what's interesting, as you said yesterday, I think it was that that they're going to drag them into the 15-minute cities. That's the whole point of this. And another interesting kind of point to that on a more esoteric level is that they're attacking the rural lifestyle or rural in terms of terminology. Pagan means rural. That's all it just means. So people are demonizing the pagan way of living. Well, that literally just means rural. So anything outside of these three Abrahamic religions is deemed pagan, which is odd because most of these religions take bits of paganism anyway and shove them inside it. So there's a lot more going on at a different level. They're attacking not only the rural way of living, they're attacking the old pagan way of life, because there's another level to this cult that believe in these weird ideologies. I'm not saying I do, but it's interesting to look into this stuff, and that kind of relates to the next story that we'll go into as well, because they speak on a different level. It has double entendre, triple entendre, really.
No, you're right. But the thing is as well, it's the thing about a rural life. Obviously, yes, you have that esoteric element to it, but even on a basic level, you can be self-sustainable in a rural life. You know, you can't grow a field full of potatoes when you live in a flat in Streatham, South London. That's not possible. So what they want is they want everyone in the cities where everyone is dependent on the state for everything. Now, you live in a rural community, which I do. You know, people can do various things and can be self-sustainable. You know, there's plenty of farmers around. People can grow their own food. They can barter. If everything goes wrong in terms of an economic collapse, you've got a way to survive. If you're in the cities, best of luck. But if you're in the countryside where you have access, you know, to land, to be self-sustainable, to power your home yourself, and all that kind of stuff, you can survive. And they don't want that. They want everyone on their knees to the state. But yes, you mentioned the next story. Now, we touched on this, I think, on Monday. I'm trying to forget what day it is. It's Wednesday, isn't it? We touched on this on Monday, the fact that the EU were introducing their central bank digital currencies, supposed to be trialled by October. They're hoping for legislation to be passed by the EU. What that means is we know it's getting passed because it's the agenda. But you've spotted some terminology, some language in this that you want to touch on, Rich.
Yeah, definitely. There's just different ways, and I like to get across different ways of looking at this. You don't often hear this sort of explanation on many other kind of news shows. So what we're saying back to that one, rural meaning pagan. Pagan means rural, and what you were saying there, living off the land in a pagan way would mean you're free. Well, the reason why that these mainstream religions don't want that, because they want you to worship that one god. If you were pagan, you got to choose between hundreds of gods, and they don't need that. They want that one god, which is this religious caste system. In the pagan lifestyle, you were more free to choose the way you live and what you believed. So it's the same principles. So what I'm trying to get across is the principles. So in this, I watched the video of this lady doing a talk. So her name is Christine Lagarde, and she is the president of the European Central Bank. So she obviously very well connected there. And she said from the start, we'll have a clip here. She's saying to the audience, "I'm very much on your page, and the universe doesn't like a vacuum." Now that is an odd thing to say at the start. It goes down to different principles of how the universe works. But have a listen to what she says here, and I'll try and explain what she possibly means in terms of the esoteric behind it.
On your second point, I tend to share your views. Nature doesn't like vacuum. And we started working on the digital euro way back. Actually, when I started my term 5.5 years ago. And I'm not claiming, parentality on the digital euro, because my colleague Benoît Cœuré had already committed a speech on this matter before I arrived. But I certainly carried on with that project, and subsequently Fabio Panetta on the board, and then Piero Cipollone, who has replaced Fabio, have taken the lead together with a very, very good team which is focused on accelerating the pace and hopefully campaigning enough with all the stakeholders, meaning European Parliament, meaning European Council, meaning European Commission, so that we can eventually, not put to bed, but put to reality this digital euro. The deadline for us is going to be October of 25, and we are getting ready for that deadline, but we will not be able to move unless the other parties, the stakeholders, as I call them, Commission, Council, and Parliament, actually complete the legislative process, without which we will not be able to move. And I think it is critically important, and it seems to the agnostic or the skeptics, it seems to be more relevant and more of an imperative now than ever before, both on the wholesale and on the retail level, both.
Another thing to mention there, Rich, just before you come in on that, is because we spoke about her on Monday, when she says, "I'm on your page." This is a woman that, when head of the International Monetary Fund, was found guilty in court of gross negligence, handing billions of pounds of taxpayer money to some French businessman. Not only escaped jail, but still kept her job at the IMF. So I don't think she's on the same page as us. I think she's on an elevated page where she can kind of do what she wants. But yeah, sorry, go on, Rich.
Well, it is exactly, yeah. She's a criminal heading up the central bank. Who would have known? Of course, that's how they get to be where they are.
It's a prerequisite for the job, Rich. It's a prerequisite for the job. Are you a crook? No, I'm legit. Well, the job's not yours then, son.
Absolutely not. We've got a toilet cleaning job here for you.
Yeah, you can have that. Yeah,
I know you'll do that one. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So the vacuum, what she mentions there, it harks back to the Kabbalah and where they see the world starting. So just to briefly explain, there was all that is, the Iron Sof, or whatever you want to call it, different names for it, the Holy Spirit, and it retracted itself, it contracted itself even, to make way for the universe. But all of that energy, of that pure energy that all that was too much and exploded. And all of these shards of light, which you see as the eternal flame, these sparks of light, fell to the earth, and they were covered in these Kelly pot husks, which is, unfortunately, those who are not of this cult. So we're covering up divine sparks within us. That's another story to get into. But it was that vacuum that they left. So it contracted itself and left a vacuum. And this comes down to the way the universe works. It doesn't like a vacuum. And in my opinion, she's a nod and a wink there to, I'm on your page. This is a Kabbalistic thought process. So this is what it says. So the Hebrew word for that chaos, which was the void, the Holy Spirit hovered over in the first chapter of Genesis, is Tohu Vavohu, or the formless void. That's the vacuum. We don't have an exact word for English, but it has been described as meaningless, emptiness, confusion, and even space where nothing can live. So this is the void and the vacuum she's talking about. So in my opinion, she's a nod and a wink. I'm on your page. I'm a Kabbalist. And this is Lurianic Kabbalah, by the way. This isn't your Madonna Kabbalah, although I think she probably knows about this stuff too. So that void, to me, and I think we need to sort of learn to decipher. I think, or it would be good to learn to decipher this language. This is this mystical language they use between each other to communicate. So when they talk about the golden age with Trump, he's talking about the golden age of Saturn. Where they're talking about the world to come, Olam Haba, and this is Kabbalistic terminology, in my opinion. The void, the vacuum, for this purpose, which is the Tohu Vavohu, which is the formless chaos. And the universe doesn't like chaos, so we're going to create what out of chaos? Order. And that's what they're talking about. And I believe that's what they're signifying to each other, signaling even.
See, when you said a void of nothingness, meaninglessness, I was just thinking of that's life as a Derby County fan. Described right there.
I was thinking of David Lammy.
Well, yeah, to be fair. Yeah. Oh, mate, don't even get me started on Lammy. Wow. It's interesting because obviously the whole thing here about the digital euro, we spoke about it on Monday after talking about it, because we just spoke about the digital yen in Japan, in China, the fact that Trump is basically doing that in America, but he's got to brand it differently. So it's the stable coin cryptocurrency. He's got to brand it differently for his supporter base, but it's the same thing, essentially. It's digital money. After that, I was on a podcast yesterday with a guy in Tanzania and a guy in Russia, because you can talk to Russians. They're all right. He didn't try and kill me through the screen or anything. And he was saying they're actually bringing in a digital ruble there. And there's also talk of the digital pound. So it's funny, isn't it, how you have a particular agenda that it doesn't matter who's fighting, as we mentioned earlier, who's the goodie at the moment or who's the baddie at the minute. So, you've got the EU, the goodie, digital currency. You've got Putin, the baddie, digital currency. When there's an agenda there, they're all aligned on it.
Yeah, you got Trump, the goodie, apparently over there, depending on where you come
depends
from.
Who you are,
that switches around too.
Yeah,
it depends where you're looking at it from. Well, as I said last week, it depends what the subtitles are saying in your country, to what the narrative is. But he's got stable coin coming out, and we all know, it's widely known that he was bailed out by the Rothschilds. They organised his bailout in the early 90s, late 80s. So who do you think he's owned by? The central bankers. So who do you think stable coin's going to be run by? central bankers.
Yeah.
Come on now.
He's the only person who can go bankrupt to such a ridiculous amount of debt, be bailed out, and get to keep all his businesses. That's not how it works, mate. That's not how it works unless they think they can use you for something later down the road, which of course they did. And some of those people, including Wilbur Ross, found themselves within his administration where they could influence literally at the coalface. Final story today. This made me laugh, not because it's funny in terms of the story is horrific, but it made me laugh in terms of the memory holing that the mainstream media does, particularly when it comes to Ukraine. I mean, they do it lots of things, but Ukraine recently, there's been lots of memory holding. So this was a story out of Reuters. Poland arrests Ukrainian woman convicted of selling 56 human kidneys. My first thought was, I thought organ harvesting in Ukraine was Russian propaganda and a conspiracy theorist. But there we go. We're there. Polish border guards detained a Ukraine... Oh, mate, I've got to say names here. Some of these Polish names, and Ukrainian names, to be fair, they look like an eye test, right?
They do.
But I'm gonna try and say them. It makes me think back to that old joke when the guy goes, the Polish guy goes into an eye test, and there's obviously all the letters, and they're like, if you could read that out, and he looks at it, he goes, read it out. I know the bloke. Polish border guards detained a Ukrainian woman who was sentenced in Kazakhstan to 12 years in prison, just 12 years in prison for participating in an organised criminal group trading in human organs and selling 56 kidneys. Prosecutors said on Tuesday. The 35-year-old woman, referred to only as, here we go, Ksenia P., under Polish privacy laws, was detained at the railway crossing between Poland and Ukraine under an Interpol red notice. Marta, crying out loud, Marta Peltkowska, a spokeswoman for the prosecutor's office in, crying out loud, here we go again, the prosecutor's office in Przemysl, said in a statement. So when I say about memory holding, obviously organ harvesting in Ukraine, that's a conspiracy theory. That's Russian propaganda. If you mention that maybe Mr. Zelensky and that lot are not like uber good guys. You are parroting. You're a Putin puppet. You're a Russian sympathizer, a Russian asset. That's another good one, a Russian bot. But here it is in black and white. And then the other one, which is the major one, which gets me every time, is when you talk about Nazis in Ukraine. You talk about the Nazi Azov battalion. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. That's Russian propaganda. You're a Russian bot. You're using Putin talking points to dehumanize those that are actually the victims of a Russian aggression. And I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure I saw Ross Kemp knocking about with loads of them. I'm pretty sure I've seen documentaries on the BBC about the Nazis in Ukraine and about the Nazi infiltrated Azov battalion that literally have SS symbolism on their outfits. But it's that memory holding, isn't it? So in 2013, 14, 15, it was fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's Ukrainian Nazis. Oh, mate, it's awful, isn't it? Yeah, it's really bad. And then it's like after 2023, 2022, 2023, oh, no, Ukrainians are good guys now. Well, what about the Nazis that are in the... what Nazis? What are you talking about? He's talking about Nazis. I don't know what he's on about.
Yeah.
I've seen Ross Kemp.
Guys meeting up for coffee.
It's mad, isn't it? I've seen the bald guy off EastEnders literally knocking around with him, and they're telling him how they want to kill all Russians. But but I can still watch it on iPlayer. No, it didn't happen. It's very strange how they do that, isn't it? It does make me think of Ricky Gervais's character David Brent in The Office, where the another character says, "But what about?" And he goes, "They won't remember." That's what the BBC and the mainstream media. That's what they think we're like, isn't it? They think we're literally like goldfish brains. They won't remember. Well, some of us do.
Well, they do remember. They just decide to cognitively just shove it out of their head because it doesn't fit the narrative of where they're going. It's interesting. Again, that ties back to our first story that now they're starting to kind of let a lot of what we've known for a long time out into the mainstream media, the legacy media, about Ukraine. So you can see the turning point here, can't you? So it fits right in exactly what you were saying before. We knew it all along, and you can look at all these people and see how they're all attached to each other, but now the narrative's slightly switching now to lessen in the favor of Ukraine. And again, remember that's just in the Western world. we don't know what's going on in the rest of the world because we don't get their news. We don't, and also we can't understand it. But the fact is that, you know, the subtitles are
even
that
pronounce
here
it,
and they're
Rich.
changing here. I know. I'm terrible with them as well. But again, that's the Tower of Babel, isn't it? We all speak in different languages, but they're getting shown different things. So who knows what propaganda they're getting shown about Ukraine, maybe in China and other countries that we're not privy to. So, you know, we know that Israel's pretty much cut off from the rest of the world in terms of the internet, and China in places definitely is. So, you know, there's almost different universes going on here with different subtitles to the same story. So we don't know what propaganda's going on over there. And I think that's something to keep in mind.
Oh, no, it is, yeah. We live in alternate realities. I mean, I remember talking about this, I think, with yourself on WhatsApp and stuff, where even during the COVID era, which is another conversation, in terms of now these news stories are coming out. Just today, I saw a news story saying that lockdowns were detrimental when actually they did more harm than good. And you're like, what, you just figured that out 5 years later? That was obvious to anyone with a brain. But you were happy to push the narrative that they worked. You were happy to push the narrative that masks worked, even though now you're saying they caused more harm than good. The vaccine was 100% safe and effective. You parroted that nonsense, yet we were saying it wasn't. And now you're saying, oh, by the way, yeah, it killed people. Did it? And so I think about that COVID era, and I told you a time, didn't I, when I had to go and take my car into the garage. Now, I don't watch the BBC. I don't pay for a TV license. I'm not paying for my own indoctrination, thanks. But I was sat in a waiting room at this garage while they were doing something, fixing my car, and I watched 10 minutes of BBC News 24 because it was on. And I remember leaving that waiting room, Rich, going, oh, that's why everyone's mental. Because of the sheer propaganda and fear and the ticker tape nonsense across the bottom and all that stuff. So you're right. What other nations are seeing is anyone's guess, really.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and it's really important to keep that, to bear that in mind, because they'll switch it here, but they'll switch it over elsewhere. So, you know, and that's coming down to an individual basis now with algorithms. So they're actually plumbing in your own choice of your reconfirming or affirming view of the world back to you through your algorithms. So every single person is basically getting their own social media video channel that is completely different from the person sitting next to them.
Yeah. And America's very different as well, just quickly, because I know we're running out of time. But I remember in a previous life working as a PT, I became friends with some of my clients, which you're told not to do. But do you know what I mean? I'm a friendly guy, Rich. And one of my clients was an American lady, and she was married to an English guy. And we were having a drink. And I can't remember why. I assume Israel was massacring Gazans again. And I made a comment, and she kind of looked at me like, what? And then her husband backed me up and was like, oh, no, X, Y, and Z. Can't remember what it was. And she was like, I've literally never heard this before, because in America, they're taught something very different about the situation in the Middle East. Like, you don't question Israel in America. I mean, you struggle to question it in England, but you seriously don't question it in America. So she then sort of was like, well, I'm going to have to go and look at this. And so she went away and sort of did some research about it and came to another PT session like a month later or 2 weeks later, whatever it was, and was literally like, my whole like understanding of the Middle East is, what? It's like, yeah, because that's what you're fed in America. And China, like you said, they'll be fed something different, and Russians will be fed something different. In South Africa, they'll be fed something different. And in doing that, over various different subjects, you just keep everyone in disagreement. Keep everyone separate, everyone arguing about stuff that actually you've probably both been lied to from one degree to another. So you just keep arguing about things that have been inserted into your heads by a media that actually, when you go high enough, is controlled by the same entities anyway.
Everyone's arguing over true lies. Basically, it's true to you because that's what you've been fed, but it's a lie overall, and I completely agree with you. And in the research that we do, we have to look at a vast amount of topics from different perspectives to get any grasp of what's going on, which is what your dad does with the dot connector, and what we do, just because that's the nature of what we do, is that you look at these commonalities between these things over a long period of time. That's where you find the themes, because the truth runs marathons, lies runs sprints, as they say.
Mate, I like these little fables, mate. I'm a big fan of that first thing in the morning. I love it. Rich, that's all for today. I'm going to be on my own tomorrow. And then you're going to be on your own on Friday. Such is parent life, juggling as always. Thanks so much for watching. To everyone at home, as always, it's brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic, that's an empty cup, that. I've finished it. Shop.iconic.com and use the code trending and you get 10% off, and all the money that we make as a profit from that coffee obviously goes straight back into Iconic to try and bring you as much information as we possibly can. I'll see you tomorrow, Rich. I'll see you tomorrow for WhatsApp at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, you will. It's hard to juggle 2 kids, isn't it? I mean, a 5-year-old is heavy and a 1-year-old is just as heavy now. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, you get family services on the phone if you get caught juggling them as well, and that's an argument you can't be bothered to have. Take it easy. See you, mate. Bye, everyone.